the organizing committee, would you all please stand up again? We really want to thank you. You brought us all together. We really need you. And is Mr. Crossman here? By chance? Thank you for the invocation. And forgive the presumptuousness of a California boy to come down and presume to say anything to anybody, but I hope what I have to say will be of value. And we'll see if the technology works. Yeah. So, this is something I think about a lot, and I can tell from looking at the program that's already talking to a lot of you that a lot of people are thinking about this a lot. So it's something I want to talk about a bit tonight. And for those of you who might be in a hurry to get back to drinking and carousing, I'll give you the short answer right now, and my talk will be done for you if you like that. The answer is yes. So that's it. That's really the condensed version of the talk. I want to skip the rest of it. That's the wrong direction. There we go. Nominally, this started as the Straw Bale Building Convention, but just to make it clear for all of us, it really expanded. It's about natural building. Because everybody builds the straw bales, and everybody starts working with earth and plasters, maybe earth and floors, maybe bamboo framing, maybe all sorts of things. And so it's really much more, in a way, straw bale building is sort of the poster child or sometimes the face of natural building in a lot of places. And forgive a little jingoism here, it's an American invention. That, like democracy and jazz, is spread all over the world, all on its own. Something that, as an American, nice, and don't get me wrong. Coming from a country that is apparently about to unleash yet another tidal wave of bizarre fury on the world, I have to remind myself that we have done some good things in America, too. But before I talk about this, I always kind of like to start to get a little perspective. So I like to start with the history of the universe. And this will be fast because it's not much to say, really. It started with a bang, a big bang. Some of you know your astronomy and your cosmology, and maybe some of you need a refresher, but about 14.7 billion years ago, there was a really, really large bang. And what this started. This is quite a bang. It was 20,000 years before things cooled down enough for matter to even exist. For the first 200,000 years of this universe, the whole periodic table of the elements was hydrogen and helium. That was it. And all that hydrogen and helium went booming around and eventually coalesced and became stars. And we had stars. And stars work by nuclear fusion. And in their cores, because it's so pressurized and intense, they can create other elements. Carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, all the other things that we know as elements. They create these in their cores and eventually blow up as supernova, and they scatter all this dust around, and you can get second-generation stars with planets. And here we are. Of particular interest to us is this one. Started 4.7 billion years ago. All of this is current understanding. Things are always changing, but that's our current understanding. The Earth is 4.7 billion years old. Life is 3.8 billion years old. That's the oldest evidence we have. 3.8 billion years ago, some bacteria. I don't remember what the evidence. I think it was in Australia. I shouldn't say it. Probably New Zealand. And it grew and it expanded and spread all over the world. And next thing you know, you've got Lady Gaga. Along the way, all sorts of things came and went. Mass extinctions have happened from coming out of the sky or coming out of the bowels of the earth. You and I are part of, and the causes of the sixth mass extinction, as I hope most of you are aware. And if you're not, that the people who did these were like you and me. They were socially and linguistically and in every other sense as skilled and intelligent as are you and I. Give them a shave and dress them up right and they can fit right into our society. Or this being a natural building gathering, you probably wouldn't have to do anything. Some say that the human species has been around for 200,000 years, and maybe so. We're always changing that number. But the oldest evidence of people like us goes back about 40,000 years. For most of that time, we didn't build stuff. This is a gathering we're talking about building. We didn't build stuff for most of that time. We didn't want to. We didn't need to. We were peripatetic. We moved around. Where the bison were running, where the salmon were spawning, where the bears were fruiting, that's where we went. That's where the food was. Until a big game changer happened, and somebody figured out to put stuff in the ground and let the plants grow and grow our own food, and then we started holding still. Such an innocuous thing, but it was the most revolutionary change in human history. Sure. And out of that, good things and bad things came. And wealth started to accumulate, cities started to grow, classes started to appear, a lot of really bad stuff, armies and wars, and so on. And we built stuff. Simple stuff, adapted to whatever landscape we happen to be in. Some of it really interesting and surviving to the day, some of it not that interesting. Some of it would do really well, some of it wouldn't do that well. But for the most part, the historic ways of building, which are our roots here as natural builders, were really well adapted to where they were. If your roof wasn't keeping the rain off, you figured out how to make a better roof. If it wasn't keeping you warm enough in the wintertime, you figured out how to stay warm and so on. The one exception being earthquakes. That with only very few exceptions, people didn't really figure out how to deal with earthquakes. The exceptions being the Japanese and to some extent the Turks. Because the big ones only happen every 3 generations or so, even in a place like New Zealand or California. So everything falls apart, things collapse in a big earthquake, and those who survive dust themselves off and then rebuild what they had before, because that's all they know. For the most part, people didn't figure out how to design for earthquakes. But we did build some cool stuff over the last few thousand years, some really magnificent buildings that survive all over the world to today, like the Roman Pantheon. And you could do that if you had a lot of energy. Because it was true then, and it's still true today. If you want to build a really good building, even if it's just a house, or a high-rise, or a pantheon, it takes a lot of energy. It might be human energy, it might be fossil fuel energy, but it takes a lot to do good building. The people who had a lot of energy then were the rich people. The emperors and the pharaohs. And they could tell people, go build me a pyramid, go build me a palace, whatever, and people would do it. Does this show, you guys get, is this? Right? You know, it's not my thing. Downton Abbey. My wife loves it. Not my thing. These people were the 1%, right? 100 years ago. The wealthiest, most powerful class on earth. The English aristocracy. And it's worth noting that they didn't live anywhere near as comfortably as any one of us in this room. They didn't have as good a water. They didn't have as good a sanitation. That abbey was cold in the wintertime, and so on. They just didn't have access to all that because the second big revolution in human history hadn't quite happened yet, or was just starting to get into gear all around them. And that was fossil fuels. We had known about fossil fuels. We had been using tar and things here and there in our cultures around the world, but not really until about a couple hundred years ago. We started saying, well, we can drive engines, and we can do things, and we started figuring out stuff we could do, mostly drive engines to do work that make everything happen faster and bigger and better. A lot of good things came out of it. And a lot of people had access to a lot of energy, so a lot of people could build better buildings. Better buildings were accessible to all of us. But it's worth noting that there was only really one new kind of building material. We had concrete. The Romans did concrete. It's still the best concrete that was ever done. We had steel, we had glass, we had brick, wood. But we didn't have plastic. That came along with the oil. This is the swimming dome in Beijing from the Olympics. Not just plastic in this form, but plastic in the 20,000 forms, 100,000 forms. I don't even know how many different kind of petrochemical products are in this room right now are on your bodies right now. How many were used to grow, prepare, and cook the food we ate tonight, and so on. We are the generation of plastic. It's part of us. It's just about unescapable. It is unescapable. We're all part of that. At much detriment to the rest of the world, as we're figuring out. There's a lot of problems with the petrochemical industry, with pollution and so on. But also what's going into the oceans. When I was preparing this talk, I said, well, I guess I should have a picture of plastic. I think I Googled plastics and sea life. And all sorts of stuff. I was weeping within a minute. It's truly awful. And I'm, again, assuming that you guys are pretty much aware of that. But what happens is plastic in every form eventually washes out to sea. Some of it gets buried, some of it goes out to sea, and creatures of every size, from the tiny ones eating little tiny particles to turtles and dolphins and whales eat this stuff or get trapped in it. And it's truly horrible. It's just profoundly and massively horrible what we're doing to the world's oceans with our plastic. Well, anyway, the Industrial Revolution is roaring along now, and you and I are part of it, and we learn how to do everything bigger, better, faster, including make buildings, and just crank them out like sausages. In a lot of ways, that's been good, right? A lot of people benefited from that. Still, some people said, wait a minute. But eventually, the moment came when people said, something about this isn't quite right, I want to do something else. That showed up in my part of the world. As much as anything else, these two books, there were lots, and I'm sure there were lots of things happening here and a lot of other parts of the world, with my California-centric perspective. But it was in this book, Shelter, that any of us ever first heard about straw bale buildings and indigenous and historic building systems all over the world. And a lot of people jumped up and said, well, I want to try that. And went off to the woods and built the stereotypical hippie houses and communes and things of the 60s. There's all sorts of stories to be told, but that, in many ways, was the birth of natural building, the natural building movement around the world. I think about this stuff too much, but the thing I finally realized, what's funny about this, we're doing this, every one of us in this room, we do natural building in whatever way that means for you, because you choose to. You have access to every other building material, but you choose to use straw, clay, or unmilled lumber, or all of those things. And so it's like a vegetarian house. Some of you are vegetarians, I'm sure. You choose not to eat meat, and there's lots of good reasons not to eat meat. You have access to meat if you want it, you just don't want to eat it for whatever reason. But we shouldn't kid ourselves. There's billions of people out there who are vegetarians and don't want to be. They would really like a nice hamburger. And there's also an awful lot of people out there who are living in natural homes, who would like to have some steel and some air conditioning and a TV and so on, right? Now, it's not good or bad, it's just like we are among a small generation, perhaps the beginning of a wave, we'd like to hope so, that are saying, well, I'd like to try something different here. And we're experimenting and we're trying things, which is how human beings learn. With our vegetarian homes, with our natural building. And now we have 50 years of it, and all sorts of interesting stuff to show. Lots of great failures, we all have stories to tell, and a lot of really cool stuff, too. One of the things I want to see, I'm a structural engineer, right? So I started messing with this 25 years ago, and the interesting, weird projects started coming to me, so I got to engineer a lot of odd stuff. And it's been a lot of fun, I get to meet a lot of cool people, but I also started wondering, what's the deal? Because very often natural builders are much more interested in the sculptural, right? The quality, what can I do? And this is really beautiful and expresses the goddess, and this is kind of sacred geometry, and maybe it does, I don't know. But it's in keeping with what architects do all over the world. It's what we're doing all over the place. It's not limited to natural buildings. We just try stuff. We do stuff. Human beings are cool. We're these goofy, funny primates. It's just that we do like really clumsy, violent things sometimes that hurt the other creatures, but we do fun stuff. These buildings are probably disasters. They won't be there for very long, but we do stuff, and so do natural builders. We do sculptural buildings. Fine, but also, so what? Are we just a little niche of just a bunch of eccentric people off on the side? What do we have to offer? Well, the first thing I started thinking was, what does a building even do? If your sculpture is not doing this, it's not not a building. It's just a sculpture that you can walk in and out of. Because ultimately, this building, a home, high-rise building, has to accomplish this function. We are creatures that, in most parts of the world, and most times this year, we need to have clothing to survive, and we even need to have the second skin to protect us from sun and rain and snow, extremes of heat and cold, other creatures, and very often, for all too many people, from other human beings. And that's the function of a building. So if you build something that doesn't do this, you're building art, which is fine, but don't pretend it's otherwise. What is a building for a young woman in Port-au-Prince, where it's dangerous everywhere, and she has no money and there's not many resources? What do we have to say to people, the billion or so people moving into East Asia right now, and desperately looking for homes? And this is what's available to them. What do we have to say to people moving to cities? As of 5, 6 years ago, I think, humanity crossed a demographic threshold where more than half of us lived in a city, an urban area, for the first time in history. And that proportion is growing more and more. We're moving to cities. We're living in cities. And ecologically, that's good. You have a lower ecological footprint in a city. And women have more opportunities for education. And children have more opportunities for health care and education. Generally, it's good that we're moving to cities. So we, the natural building world, what do we have to say to these people? Another way to put that is, whoa, I hit the sweet spot here. How do we get from these horrible urban slums that are appearing and growing in pretty much every city in the world to this? I mean, you've all seen various versions of pictures like this, imaginations of the eco-city, where there's greenery everywhere, and the buildings are collecting solar energy and water, and waste is being treated, and everything's kind of groovy, and everybody's getting along. You can imagine that. And it's not like a total pipe dream. You've all had, I hope you've had, the experience of being in a great city, in a great neighborhood, in a great moment. You know, a London street or a Paris street, where it's a city, and there's lots of people, and there's big buildings, but people are having a good time, and it's cool, and it works. How do we get there? Well, what do we have to offer? What's our shtick? What's natural building? To me, it's 3 things. It's local. You don't do a lot of screwing around with it. You don't burn a lot of fossil fuels to change it from one shape to another. To force molecules to do things they don't want to do. You work with what you got. And it's something that is cheaper, easy to harvest in the landscape around you, and can then be turned back into the landscape for another building. To me, these are the salient points. And if somebody has other essential points, I'd like to know this. This is a work in progress. And there's also urban natural, which kind of gets overlooked because we focus on the straw and the clay, but shipping containers are being used in all sorts of cool ways. I did a house with shipping containers in the Bay Area. Project I'm very proud of being part of. A colleague of mine built a community center in Nairobi. And the whole notion was it would be a place where people, this biggest slum in the world, Kibera, where people could come and they would buy into it as a co-op and get a shower, get their cell phone charged off of the PV panels up in the roof, and get an education. So turning out, the classrooms are the biggest part of it. It's this huge success that's happening. But part of it was this technology developed in California to take plastic bottles, chop them up, and put them in a big tub. And using all the surface area you get from that, you can treat sewage with no input of power or water. Self-contained. You can deal with human waste that way. They built a pilot as a rest stop on the highway in California. It's working great. With no input of water or power. And so we built this in Nairobi, and it's underground. And so it's dealing with these really basic needs that very poor people in very difficult situations where there's lots of plastic bottles can get by. To me, that's natural building too. Context is, to what audience would we address ourselves? To whom might we offer something? Well, the context is the global building picture. We're putting all this carbon in the air. Nearly half of it, in one way or another, can be attributed to our buildings. Most of that is air conditioners and lights and heaters through the lifetime of a building, but a good chunk of that is from construction. And that's mainly the materials that we choose to use. And that's going to matter a whole lot because we've got to build a lot of buildings. It's kind of staggering. I've shown this slide before. Hard to get your head around. Ed Mesri and the people at Architecture 2030 in the States have done these calculations, and from them I get these numbers. But imagine all the building stock in the USA. I can't, but you get the idea. 3.5 times that is what we need to build and will be building in the next 15 years to accommodate the 3 billion or so people who are going to be showing up. That's not a bunch of little single-family straw bale houses in the woods. Not by a very long shot. We have to build a whole lot of buildings. And so that 10% number of global emissions from the material is actually much bigger. Because we're going to be building a lot of stuff, and that's carbon emissions that go in the air now. Not the carbon emissions you save over the 100-year period of your building. Like this. You build something this year, you're hit on the climate for your house, your straw bale house, your natural house, or your high-rise building, whatever it is. It's all from the embodied carbon of all those materials in the construction. But that effect proportionately diminishes over time because the operating energy takes over and starts to dwarf that, running the heater, running the lights, and so on. This has been the sort of common wisdom in green building for a quarter of a century now. And so all the focus has been on better insulation, better windows, better heating and cooling systems, and all that. And that's all great, but hold the phone. There's a little bit of a problem here, which is that the two curves don't intersect till 15 years out, which means that all the hit to the climate, recall that the climate is cooking already, and sea level's rising now, and the weather's changing. We have to stop carbon emissions now. And the big hit is not coming from the air conditioners and the lights. It's coming from the materials we use to build all those new buildings that we got to build. Another way to look at that is if you build something next year, 3/4 of the hit over your building's lifetime to the climate has happened right then. That's sort of like time value of money. But what you put in the air now is going to be cooking the climate for the rest of the life of that building, not what you saved over 60 or 100 years because you put in better windows. So, sometimes you can think of it like this. The operating energy is so big, and so the net zero movement, the passive house movement you've heard about, they say, let's shrink that way down. Great, that's fun. But sometimes in doing that, they put more stuff. More layers of insulation, more lines of sealant, more whatever, more stuff. And they raise the embodied energy, and they actually are maybe doing the wrong thing for the climate by doing so. So, don't panic, because you can have both. It's not that hard. How do we get very low carbon building materials and very good performance? What we kind of need are materials that are locally sourced, minimally processed, and easily recycled. Does that sound familiar to anybody? So here we are. This is our marketing pitch, kids. This is our shtick. It might not be, the world's not going to be saved by straw bale construction, but hidden inside of this natural building movement of the last 50 years are some things that are coming out that have a whole lot to say to the world. Ultra low carbon building. I'm just transitioning. I don't want to call that natural buildings. Natural doesn't even mean you go in the grocery store and there's natural soap and natural, natural degreaser for your engine in your car. So what can we learn? What have we learned? What can we? What's the essence? What's the good stuff that we can gather out of what we do, building with straw and earth and so on? Well, one of them is that you can insulate. You can use straw to basically encapsulate air, which is how you insulate. And so, for example, you can go to all these big concrete block buildings that are all over the place now. And of course, they're thermally terrible, no insulation. Give them a wrap of bales. You can use hempcrete. I know at least somebody's going to be talking about hempcrete. Rachel, you're going to talk about it. Has that come to New Zealand yet? You guys have that? A little bit? Yeah, it's just kind of starting to arrive in the States. There's a few projects. Invented in France, really big in the UK, maybe other places I haven't heard about, but it's a really great product. It makes use of, doesn't just make use of the hemp plant, it makes use of the part of the hemp plant that nobody else wants. Am I right? Okay, I'm going to sit down. more about that. But it's a really, really cool product that I find really exciting, and what you might call a second generation natural building product. You can run blocks out of straw with a consistent dimension, with enough strength to hold a little weight, and also insulate. Here's another thing you can do, is make sheeting. I've seen companies come and go, because it's kind of hard to get going in this business, but making straw panels that are performance is just like plywood or OSB, plenty strong, plenty durable, sometimes even better. And you can make insulating straw panels, and we've seen versions of those appear down here in New Zealand and Australia, and also in the States and Canada, all sorts of things. But again, it's really hard to break into the construction market, but these things are bubbling around, and sooner or later, something's going to start moving into the market. This might be the big one, because for those of you who don't know, the way we make concrete now is, concrete is artificial rock. Period. It's sand and gravel and something to glue them together. And the glue that we use, invented 190 years ago in England, is Portland cement, which is a fantastic building product. I know a lot of people are naturally like, Portland cement, it's the devil, man. It's Darth Vader. Well, no, it's a really cool building product. It has its limitations. There's things you shouldn't use it for, but there's a lot of things it can do that nothing else can do. The problem is it comes at a huge price. 6% of our carbon emission are just from baking limestone and Portland cement. But you don't need it to make concrete. Here's a city in Yemen that's made entirely of cotton. It's been there for 1,000 years. Clay-based concrete. Works perfectly well. Not to mention the Romans, who built the most magnificent and significant concrete buildings in history. 2,000 years ago, and the Pantheon is still there. It's still the most magnificent building I ever saw, and they didn't use Portland cement. So we can learn a bit from these people. We can also go high if we want. We're starting to do wood building by laminating wood in different ways, cross-laminated floors. Are you seeing that down here too, cross-laminated timbers? Yeah. And I don't even know what the record is right now. In Western North America, which is seismically active, I think there's now 10 and 12-story buildings, probably in Vancouver. In other words, you can, even in a seismically active area, you can go pretty high. Theoretically, the height limit is 15, 18 stories, I'm not sure. People are pushing that limit all the time right now with wood. And of course, people are doing stuff with bamboo in a few parts of the world where there's lots of guadua, high-strength, big bamboo. Magnificent buildings. And of course, the Japanese, as I mentioned earlier, they've been doing stuff for centuries. And they figured out how to do these things to make multi-story pagodas, timber frame buildings, hang together even in an earthquake. Only in the last few decades that we engineers have figured out what to do. We call them now viscous mass dampers and base isolation and floor isolation and so on. But the Japanese were just doing it, we think instinctively, thank you. But we don't really know, but they were one of the few people who really kind of figured out earthquakes. And so you can go really big with natural materials and go many stories. Which sort of begs the question, well, how do I do my high-rise buildings? How do I go more than 10, 12, 15 stories? To which the answer is, well, currently, if you go higher than that, you have to use Portland cement concrete or structural steel. We don't have the other way to do that. But my response, and more people's response now is, are you sure you want to? If you've ever had the experience of being in a beautiful city in a beautiful moment, you've seen all the old great cities of the world, they're only 5, 6 stories high. Partly because that was a limitation of how high the materials could handle, but mostly it was a limitation on how far people were willing to go up and down stairs. I'm sure there are some other things going on too, but as a result of that, you only had buildings that were, I don't know, what is that, 30 meters high? And you had light and sunlight on the streets and air. And they were human scale. And they were buildings that people, they were human scale. They weren't like these monstrosities. And I worked 30 years ago at a big firm in San Francisco doing high-rise building. And I worked on those things. It's kind of glamorous and everybody feels special that we're doing these really big buildings. But they're stupid. They're just stupid. I was in one in an earthquake and got stuck in one earthquake. It was not a pleasant feeling. And they're extremely high carbon. And in so many ways, they're like very high carbon per capita kind of buildings. They don't work in a lot of ways. And yet the fact is people love them and they still build them. You know, if your city builds the highest building in the country and in the world, buildings, mosques. And once a year, the whole village gets out, and it's a festival, it's a ritual, semi-religious, semi-culture, and the whole village gets out and picks up a lot of mud, and they get up on there and put on a new coat of earth plaster to replace what the rain washed away. What a wonderful way to handle a building, take care of a building. And the people who first built the straw bales, they were European settlers coming into a part of America with nothing else to build with. They used what they had, they worked with each other, and took care of each other. Now, that's all very nice, right? It's sort of like, well, that's nice, Bruce. That's very high labor, and you guys are having a good time. And it's sort of like you have this eccentric society that's into collecting stamps or antique lampshades or something. What does that have to do with the real world? Where in New Zealand and California and the industrialized world, labor costs are really high. That's what drives the job, and everybody's always trying to get labor costs out of the job. They don't want to have a good work party. They don't want to have a lot of people. And that's true. We shouldn't kid ourselves or anybody about it. If we're trying to sell high labor construction technology to people, it's just not going to be a sell to more than a very few people, like us in the room. Until we put a price on carbon. Because right now we're subsidizing fossil fuels. In most places we don't have any price on the use of it. But we're starting to see carbon trading schemes like we have in California now, or carbon taxes, where the cost of using fossil fuel to replace human energy, which is through most of history what we use, is going to start to switch back again. And it'll start to make sense to hire another 6 people on your job site rather than just importing something from the other side of the world that was easier to use. So you can do all these things. We have all this to offer. And we're collecting the carbon, not emitting it. We're putting it in the building. We're sequestering it. Part of any strategy to halt climate change is pulling climate out of the air, halting emissions and pulling it out of the air. Now, from what I've heard from people who study this stuff, most of that is in changing the way we do farming, the way we manage soils and building up soils. But a lot of it's also in buildings, and we can put the carbon in the building in a totally safe and wonderful way. Hang on a minute. I can't give a long talk without vodka. How many of you heard of biomimicry? The whole notion is fairly simple. What would nature do? How should we harvest energy? How should we gather water? How should we deal with our wastes? How should we build? How should we grow food? Nature's been doing it for 3.8 billion years in thousands of different ways. And maybe we could learn something about that. And in fact, people have started studying this and looking for how we might make building materials. Classic examples is people who are studying the abalone, but there's all sorts of mollusks in the sea. And they live and grow in really, really difficult conditions. The surf's banging on them all the time, they're getting dried out in the sun and then wetted by the high tide, and there's all sorts of things that want to eat them. They have to be pretty tough to get by. And when people started studying like the abalone shell, they found these interesting patterns at various levels, from the molecular up to the visible. And kind of surprisingly, just as kind of an aside, but it became relevant because people have been studying some of the historic ways of building, like masonry infill timber frame. There's different ways to put that. But all over the world, there are many parts of the world where people have built timber frame buildings with various combinations of timbers running in odd little directions like that, and then filling them in with bricks or adobes or whatever. And any structural engineer would tell you, this is a terrible system. It's just going to collapse immediately in an earthquake. It's terrible. And over again, they don't. Earthquakes happen, and they stay there. And there's a small band of engineers who are now aware of this, and we're like studying it, and kind of, what do we learn from this? Because they don't collapse, and the new modern concrete buildings next door did. What does that mean? And there's a correlation. Here's another one. This is a bulletproof vest made out of Kevlar. Incredible material. Invented it. For people whose lives have been saved by a bulletproof vest, I'm sure they're very happy that it exists. Here's spiderweb. One guy was spider webs. Among many amazing things that you learn about, he said, if I could get enough of the stuff that I could make 15-millimeter rope, give me enough of it, I could make a net and put it in the sky, and I could catch a Boeing 747 in mid-flight and just hold it there, undamaged. There is no such material in our repertoire. Now, Kevlar is made by taking petroleum and boiling it at high temperature and pressure in sulfuric acid for a few hours. And then you squeeze out this ungodly stuff out of a plate, and then leave it together and get your bulletproof vest or your surfboard or whatever it is you make. Cool material, horrid process by which you make it. And compare that to the much superior spider web, which is insert dead bugs one end at room temperature and pressure, and out the other end you get spider web. Do you think maybe we can learn a little bit here? Or Portland cement. You make Portland cement by baking limestone at some ungodly high temperature, 1800 degrees Fahrenheit. I think that's, what is it, 27 kilometers? Something like that. I'm not really like it. But you drive all this carbon into the air, the fuel that you burn and the carbon that comes off the limestone turns into cement. 6% of our carbon emissions come from making this stuff, so we can glue our artificial rock together to make concrete. Nature does other stuff. This is a termite mound in Africa. They also occur, I think, in Australia. And it's actually not the mound. They make this with their spit. They just chew the dirt and make these big mounds. And all through the day, the termites are moving through it, opening up passageways, closing them back off, and so on, to use the prevailing breezes and so on. It's basically an air conditioner to maintain a steady temperature and pressure for the actual hive, which is underground. That's plenty cool enough all by itself, but some people have started studying what is in this termite spit that they can make this stuff. That's very hard, and it's hard as concrete. And of all things, the Brazilians have been the first to start studying this. You'd think Brazilian engineers have been an oxymoron. The Brazilians are doing all sorts of really cool stuff. There's a lot of brilliant, wonderful work happening in Brazil and all over Latin America. And they've been studying this, and among other things, some people are trying to make enzymatic concrete. There's a woman in North Carolina in the States who's making these bioblocks, biomason.com, yeah. I don't know how far she's in the market yet. It's still in development. She's got a lot of funding. She's making enzymatic concrete blocks. Here's another one, mushrooms. We're just beginning to discover all the things that fungi can do, that mushrooms can do. Some people started studying them and thinking about them, and they said we can make insulation. And so Ecovative up in New York, they spray this stuff into a wall cavity with chopped up newspaper, some sort of cellulose as food. They spray it in there and the mushrooms grow. They just fill the cavity. It's done. You have an insulated cavity. Non-toxic and it's great. I know that there's people who are doing right. No, I don't believe the robots, man. Let's skip that part. It's kind of an anti-technology strain in natural building. But I have to throw this in there because, whether we like it or not, people are making more and more robots, and we use tools. And using this tool, you've probably got a smartphone in your pocket. You like a nice set of chisels. We use tools. We're tool-using people. They're just getting more and more sophisticated and fancy. And so, for example, you can imagine you want to build a cob house in New Zealand, and you go to a site, and the site soil's kind of funny, and you get a robot this big that will take off the organic topsoil and store it for you, and then dig out the soil, and you don't know what kind it is, and you have it assessed. It's much easier to just come out with a bucket of little robots that are maybe this big and solar powered. They just crawl over the thing for a few days, and when you come back after a week, you've got a pile of sand, and you've got a pile of clay, and you've got your pile of silt. You take it from there. Now, if you'd rather do that yourself, fine, you can. But these sorts of things are going to be happening. We're going to have all sorts of technologies to help us to do the stuff we don't want to do, whether we like it or not. But one way or another, it's going to be a combination of that and us doing things. I get asked the question, do you think it's going to be a total techno world and all this, or is it going to be all going to go back to low tech is and machines. We're going to be inventing more and more machines. If there's a demand out there, if there's money to be made, somebody's going to invent a machine. So I've been thinking about biomimicry a lot. And that's kind of what I want to end with. You've heard about the biosphere. Maybe, I hope you've heard about the biosphere. This is the globe, the circle of life, the globe of life on Earth. But of course, it's nothing like that because most of the Earth is molten rock, the core of the Earth. Only a few hundred meters that away is a really different place. Only 20 meters that way is a really different place. Life is a shell, a very, very thin shell, maybe a kilometer below sea level up to 7, 8, 9 kilometers above sea level. So that's stretching it. Is where all of life is, where all the potable water is where all the species are, all the biomass is. This is where it's all happening. This is where we get food, this is where we get our building materials, this is where we throw stuff away. This is where it's all happening. It's not that big. In other words, the kind of thing you want to take care of. You don't want to shit in the living room. And it's not that big of a living room. Kilometer below sea level to 8 above. That's less than the distance of the center of Christchurch to the airport. Turn that up on edge and just wrap that around the world. That's how thin it is. It's just amazing. You know, I flew here in an airplane, international flight from San Francisco to Auckland, but I never got more than this far above the surface of the Earth. Much further than that, it's deep space. You know, the airplane doesn't fly because there's no air to hold the wing up. It's kind of, it looks like it's done this big thing here, but we're just in this really thin shell. All of us living beings. So this is Janine Benyus, the wonderful biologist in Montana in the States who wrote the book, Biomimicry, and has spent the last 25 years doing a really cool job of traveling around and working with governments, academia, industry, helping them think about how can I do whatever I'm doing better without creating toxic byproducts, without hurting people, making more money by studying how nature does stuff. It has all these cool stories. Check out her website. I think she's got 2 books out now, I'm not sure. I had the pleasure of having dinner with her a few weeks ago. I put on a conference in San Francisco, sort of like this, and she came to dinner together. And she told me a story. She said, I got invited to speak way up in the north of Canada, up in the Arctic tundra, to a First Nations people. I don't remember the name of those people, but and Janine goes all over the world. She keynotes conferences of 30,000 people. She's like a big rock star, she does, and also a wonderful human being. But she says to me, I'm invited up these First Nation indigenous peoples to talk about biomimicry. So I was very self-conscious, she says. Here I'm just a little white girl from the States. Tell these people how to live with nature. She said, I felt a little bit funny about it. But I gave it my best shot. I guess I did all right. So they received me warmly. And afterwards, the organizers came up to me and said, we need you to stick around for a little while. The elder would like to talk to you. The elder. Okay, she said, I sit down in this little room, in this little building, under fluorescent light, in the middle of nowhere. It's like 500 miles to the next town. Everybody leaves, and she's just sitting there with this security guard. After a while, the door opens back up, and the people come back in. And there's this old guy, and he walks up to her and looks her in the eyes. They tell me you have a clue. Well, I try. And he says, if there's a problem in your world, to whom do you look to fix it? She said, well, I look around and I ask around and I find the smartest people. And he says, no. You look down. You look at the worms, and the beetles, and the moles, the little ones in the soil. They're holding our world together. They give us the soil that gives us our food. Little ones in your stomach right now are digesting that dinner you just ate, without whom you're dead by midnight. also, maybe there's a metaphor there for the construction industry. We can be like the worms. Like, for example, just for one large example, if we can get all that damn plastic out of the ocean, large and small, get all out of the ocean. Okay, now we're in a big pile of wet. What are we going to do with it? We're going to have to have something to do with it. Well, hey, we're the industry that uses lots of stuff. We're the ones who are going to find something to do with it. Turn it into insulation, into roofing panels, I don't know what. But we're the ones who use lots of stuff and can be like, we're going to fix that stuff. So, I don't know, I just love that story. It was only a few weeks ago she told me that. I just don't, yeah, that makes sense. And so, for better or for worse, you came all this way to hear somebody stand up on stage and tell you to think like a worm. But that is my message. And this picture was taken at the, of yours truly, at the International Straw Bale Corroboree in Wagga Wagga. Anybody remember when? Was it 2002? 4? 2? And two things happened right before this picture was taken. One is a beautiful Australian woman got in the tub with me to help me mix plastic. And I am here to tell you that if you've never mixed plaster with a mysterious stranger in a bathtub, doing the bump, in a bathtub in the middle of the field under God's blue sky, you haven't lived. But you may have some opportunities coming up this week. So stay alert. The other thing that happened right before this picture was taken was that Graham North, registered New Zealand architect and otherwise upstanding citizen, came up to me with a big warm smile and a big warm heart and a very muddy hand. Bam! Planted it right up. See it on my t-shirt. And here 14 years later, at least 30 washings. And it hasn't come out. My hope for all of us is that in the week to come, you will come away with many new friends, you'll learn things, and metaphorical, if not literal, handprint on your chest. Remember. Thank you very much.